Hi fellow birdies, and welcome back to another edition of Mr. Songbird's Writing Book Club. In today's video, I'm going to be having some, leftovers from Coletta's, as well as, do a quick review of a book I read recently, Run for Your Life by C.M. Sutter. I don't know if it's as good or better after you, sometimes with the Italian food, it's often better after you put it in the fridge. Just as good. This book is a thriller book, which I haven't read that many thrillers, so I was curious to see what it's like. I had visions like International Crime Syndicate, Conquers the World. It wasn't on that level, but it was definitely a thrilling ride. I don't want to go into too much detail for fear of spoiling it for those who read it. I would recommend checking it out, first of all. It's definitely a good book. Most of it worked very well for me. There was one part, though, that made it difficult for me, though. How should I put this? When you think that someone clearly made a blatantly obvious mistake in story, and it's not called out by the audience, the readers, or the characters, it can jar you sometimes. And there's one scene in particular in this where it's guilty of that. We're going to try to keep it as non-spoiler as possible. It's where one of the captives, I'll say that, escapes. And the captors, they then proceed to just wait. It isn't until later that they actually move. Now, it didn't work out too badly for them in the story. I just can't see someone holding someone captive, and that person then, fleeing, and being able to escape, potentially, being able to tell, whoever is following exactly where they were being held captive, and sitting there, just shrugging it off. And that kind of, ruined my suspension of disbelief just a little bit. That said, apart from that, the plot was quite good. It kept me guessing, for quite a while. I was wondering, okay, who's responsible? Why would they do this? Was this related to one of the other subplots? So, in terms of plot overall, I'd say it was quite good. Except for that one moment, I would have given it, a really high rating. But that, blatantly foolish, for all that character would have known, she could have led, and the captive could have led the cops to their back door, to their front door. And then they proceed to move much later on. So they could have moved at any time. So it's like beating that top into the dirt. Point is, good, but that one keeps it from being the highest possible rating. So I'll rate this out on a scale of 4 to 5. And that would bring it down to about a 4 to me out of 5. In that category. Now, characterization was excellent. Each one of the characters felt true to life. I had, there were never any moments, apart from, that one, plot thing, where I felt like any of the characters was acting unrealistic. Or, not unrealistic, unreal. Because obviously, a lot of people will do things in, books that we would never do in real life. But at no point did I feel that any of the characters wasn't true to their characters. So I'm going to say that for characterization purposes, it's a solid 5 stars. 5 out of 5. As far as description goes, that was kind of a weak point. Like, the areas around them were described, very functionally, very well. But the weak point is, I still have no idea. Maybe I missed it, like some subtle, description at some point. But for a lot of the main characters, I don't know what they look like. Now, I'm not saying you have to start like with immediate, description, which in fact I think is a downside. A lot of people make that mistake. But I should still be able to have a good idea of what the characters look like at some point. Ideally, like the first couple chapters. Still, the other description was quite fine. So, you bring this to about 3.5. The plot itself wasn't terribly original, but it was executed well. There were a number of points where I was like, wow, this is how cops handle it? I wasn't sure if it was just because of how the writer had written it, but it felt like this could easily be, an actual police department. Now, for overall rating, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. It's not good enough that I can see myself like rereading a bunch in the future, but I'd say it's worth a read. And a few small differences would have been enough to take it easily to a 4.5 for me. Like just the small, I don't want to say plot hole, because the blatant foolishness on the part of the bad guys. Basically, overall good, but ruined by a couple of small, but significant mistakes. Still, overall, not bad. For me, a bad story is one where I find myself slogging to get through the story. There were some moments early on where I was a trifle slow, but at no point did I feel like, ugh, I have to keep reading this because I have no choice. Otherwise, I wouldn't read it. Good enough to keep reading. Not so great that I'm going out of my way for it. How can this help you? You can avoid pitfalls that this person fell into. Hey, they're a best-selling author, so you're getting the chance to learn from the mistakes of someone else. And I'm going to try to avoid those mistakes myself. Like the description thing, that's not a huge detail, but the plot hole, really, I'll say this was just as good as when I had it yesterday. Like this fish still flakes perfectly. The garlic bread was buttery, cheesy, melty, all the good stuff. Now if I could have that as in terms of quality for a book, I'd be thrilled. So definitely try Coletta's. I'm going to pop out. I'll see you folks next week. Hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye, fellow birdies.